And you see me here this evening uncharacteristically because of you, because of our pensions pot, because of our future. If you see me here, it's because we're having that National Pensions Dialogue. And here's why. Ghana's pension system has evolved significantly since the establishment of the Social Security Act in 1965. The original framework was predominantly pay as you go, placing a heavy financial burden on government. Now, recognizing the unsustainability of this model, reforms were introduced in 2008 through the National Pensions Act, that is Act 766. This act established the current three-tier system aimed at diversifying pension resources, enhancing fund management, and ensuring long-term sustainability. But the question is, how have these systems put in place enhanced our pensions regime, our pension system? Are pensioners satisfied with how the scheme is being run? Our interactions paint quite a mottled picture. How have our pension funds been managed? That's the question we're asking today. As we engage in this national dialogue on pension reforms, it is crucial to consider best practices from other countries that have successfully reformed their pension systems, placing the pension beneficiaries at the core of the scheme. Today, this national dialogue on pension reforms in Ghana has assembled diverse stakeholders, and we've been thorough. We've brought in labor unions, pensioners themselves, pension trustees, researchers, and public pension trusts to chart a sustainable path forward. We believe that by learning from best practices and adapting them to our unique context, we can build a more robust, a more inclusive pension system that ensures dignity and financial security for all Ghanaians in their retirement years. Is the least we can do. I will introduce my guest shortly, but first, let me share with you some data on pensions, as you can see right behind me, concerning Ghana and across the world. As we go on, we shall also look at some of those best practices we can imbibe in our own system. So let's look at it. Admittedly, even in the 40s and 50s, whether for teachers and others, there were things that had happened here and there. But before 1965, private schemes primarily controlled pensions in Ghana. If you look at 1946, the Pension Ordinance, a non-contributory pension scheme, was established. You can say these were the first baby steps that we took. In 1955, teachers became coverable under the ordinance. And a year after that, in 1956, Social Security was established. Then in 1960, a crucial year, when of course we got a constitution, a compulsory savings scheme was introduced. Now, watch the trajectory from 1960. In 65, compulsory savings scheme was abolished due to widespread apathy. People were simply not on board. The Social Security Act, Act 279, was passed to establish a Social Security Fund as a provident fund. Then the Ministry of Finance and State Insurance Corporation managed the fund at the time. Another crucial year, 1972, SNIT, as we know it, was established by decree, that is NRCD 172, or 127, I beg your pardon, to administer the Social Security scheme with a tripartite board of directors. Then fast forward some 16 years later to 1988, the student loan scheme was established and managed by SNIT. Then in 1991, PNDC Law 247 was promulgated, converting SNIT from a provident fund to a pension scheme after comprehensive stakeholder engagement. So you see it properly taking off from 1991. In 2008, to enhance what SNIT does, significant reforms led to the passage of the National Pensions Act, establishing the three-tier pensions structure. In 2010, just about 14 years ago, the implementation of the Pensions Act started, it took off, and in 2014, the Pensions Act was amended to reduce the age exemption, correct formulas for computation, and introduce an emigration benefit. Now, if you look at the influence of organized labor in respect of the makeup of SNIT, and in recent times, we've got to know some of them on the back of the SNIT Rock City deal. you would realize that the board chair, a journalist known by many who has worked with the BBC, also a member of the New Patriotic Party, Elizabeth Ekia Ohene, board chair. Representing the Employers Association, Emmanuel Edu Sarkodie. The president's nominee, Gloria Irene Paida. Then the Pensioners Association, all of them have a say on the board, Benjamin Odote Esuman. Then, of course, the Ministry of Finance, which will also have an impact, represented by Abna Osei Asare. The Director General currently, Kofi Osafo-Mafo. Then the Company Secretary, Gifty Annan, the President's nominee, Peter Osei-Dua, and you would realize 4 organized labor representatives, bringing organized labor's representation to 7. But SSNIT selling 60% of its stake in its hotels. The question is why? What were some of the reasons given? To develop the hotels into world-class facilities to meet world-class standards, for capital injection to secure more money to pump into these ventures, and also to assist in the management of these hotels. But let's look at how SSNIT has fared. SSNIT's financial performance vis-a-vis contributions received and benefits paid. You look at the trajectory all the way from 2010, and of course, the yellow lines. For those following on Joy 99.7 FM, you may not see unless you switch to television, but at least I'll try to go through the data for you. Benefits paid, the curry line, I should say, and then the contributions are the blue line that you see here. So if you look at the disparities from 2010, contributions 576 million, the sum paid 310 million. So you would see that SSNIT recouping or retaining over 200 million. And that followed by 2011, 825 million contributed, 355 million paid in benefits, even more retained by SSNIT to keep it running. 934 million, and it's incremental. In fact, if you look at it, in 2012, 934 million, 443 million doled out, 1.15 billion in 2013, 692 million doled out. In 2014, a year after that, 1.78 billion Ghana cedis and 941 million Ghana cedis paid out by way of benefits. In 2015, 2.1 billion secured, 1.2 billion paid out, 1.85 billion in 2016, 1.78 billion doled out. You realize that from 2016, there was some shrinkage. Then in 2017, 2.37 billion accrued, 2.2 billion paid out. Then in 2018, similar figures. In 2019, we hit the 3 billion Ghana cedi mark. 3 billion contributions made. In 2019, 2.95 billion paid out. And then a record 5 billion Ghana cedis in 2020. How much was paid out? 3.3 billion, which would mean that the disparity would be about 1.7 billion that SSNIT had to work with. And then in 2021, 4 billion, a decrement of about 1 billion Ghana cedis, but 3.6 billion doled out with a margin of about 400 million Ghana cedis. Again, if you look at SSNIT's financial performance in terms of the net investment income, there's a story here. So you'd see that in 2013, it summed up 460.42 million Ghana cedis. It dropped sharply in 2014 to 162.59 million Ghana cedis. It crept up a bit, 2015, all the way to about 425 million, and it was sustained on that level. You would see 2019, 2020 about 469.47 million, up to about 473.74 million in the year 2020. Now, if you look at the surplus or deficits at year end, you would also see quite a picture here. If you look at 2013 to 2015, there were surpluses. In 2013, about 588 million Ghana cedis. 2014, a gargantuan sum of 726 million Ghana cedis. In 2015, it fell a bit, but still healthy, 612 million. In 2016, an electoral year, it fell. There was a deficit of 364 million Ghana cedis. But in 2016, 2017, it crept up again to 131 million in the black. We were in the black there, not in the red. But it sunk again 2018 by 442 million. If you do the math, you'd probably be adding these two figures, the deficit from here and the boons from 2017, all the way sunk into this deficit in 2018. In 2019, 472 million deficit. In 2020, there was an increment. You realize that there was a record in 2020 and 588 million in the black. But then in 2021, it sunk again, which is why we've been getting some of the reports from the ILO pointing to the fact that we likely, by the year 2036, earlier it was about 2040, we could be in dire straits when it comes to our pensions regime. But now if you look at whether government is mismanaging workers' retirement funds and the cause of declines in SSNIT's asset size, what is some of what has accounted for this? One, the indebtedness of private and public employers to the scheme, those who simply refuse to pay, and the system failing to follow up on them to ensure that the right things are done. Then, a rise in the payment of benefits over the years. And you would also look at unfavorable investment outcomes. And this is a crucial area of concern, especially noting what has happened recently. SSNIT and Rock City, the investments SSNIT has got itself into, have they been viable? Have they been in the best interest of the ordinary contributor? Those are some of the questions we're asking today. Sustainability is a crucial issue we're going to be looking at today. And if you look at SSNIT's funding ratio, you would see there in 2018, 3.2, then you see a sharp decline all the way to 2020, a year when we did pretty well in terms of contributions. 2022, and then if you look at the figure for 2021, 2.74, and then a decline from there. So the funding ratio versus performance. Has SSNIT done what we would expect? We have 3 tiers of contributions now, but the major one is SSNIT, with millions on board. How are you, as a contributor, benefiting from SSNIT? Are you satisfied with how things are going? Well, I'll introduce my guests, we'll take a break, and then we'll come back into the studio. Featuring this evening, helping us navigate this conversation, we have the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Recruitment Research, Abdallah Mashoud. We also have the Director of Research and Policy of the Trades Union Congress, the TUC, Dr. Kwabena Nyako Otu. Also joining the conversation, Thomas Kwesi Esso. He is Executive Secretary, Chamber of Pensions Trustees. He is in the studio with us. The President of NAGRAT, Angel Kabonu, also joins us in the studio. We also have the President of the Ghana Nurses and Midwifery Association, Perpetual Oforiampofo, also in the studio. We have other guests who also join us virtually via Zoom. They include Mr. Joe Poku, Chief Actuary at SSNIT, Balbir Violet Nadinswa Allen, a pensioner who will be sharing her story, her struggles when it comes to pension benefits. The Secretary General, Public Services Workers Union of the TUC, Bernard Ejay, and former General Secretary, Ghana Medical Association, Dr. Justice Yankson. We also have Professor Bessa White. He's a researcher on pensions. He's done some extensive work. His PhD thesis was on pensions. We'll be getting into that. And finally, Austin Gami. We all know him. He's a labor expert. All of these people will join me over the next 2+ hours as we get into the kitty of SSNIT, where it has done well, where it has failed, and what the way forward is. My name is Benjamin Akakbo. Thank you for staying with us on this National Pensions Dialogue. We'll be right back. So here we are back in the studio, and we're about to commence the conversation. I'm going to reach out to my guests in the studio and then go over to those on Zoom as well. In the studio, we have Executive Director, Africa Center for Retirement Research, Abdallah Mashood. Thank you for joining the conversation. We also have the Director of Research and Policy of the TUC, Dr. Kwabena Nyako Otu, then Thomas Kwesi Esso. He is also in the studio, Executive Secretary, Chamber of Pensions Trustees. Then we shall have as well President of NAGRAT, Angel Kabonu, over time in the studio. We also have the President of the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwifery Association, Perpetual Ofori Ampofo. She was cautioning me earlier that I have to add the registered, so I have added that. We also have via Zoom Mr. Joe Poku, Chief Actuary with SNIT, Balbir Violet, Nadinso Island, a pensioner, Secretary General, Public Services Workers Union of TUC, Bernard J, former General Secretary, Ghana Medical Association, Dr. Justice Yankson. And we shall have Professor Pesa White, a researcher on pensions, and Austin Game, a labor expert. But let me start from here in the studio. They say ladies first, and I agree. So I'll start with Perpetual. Good evening, first of all, to all of you.
Good evening. Good evening.
From the viewpoint of the registered nurses and midwives, you also benefit from this. But when you look at our pensions, and I'm sure that is why you're here, how concerned are you with where we stand currently?
So pensions is a very important aspect of our working lives, and every worker, whether you are in the public sector or in the private sector or formal, informal, you should be very interested about your pensions whilst you are working today, because by the time you are retiring, the energy is down, you may not be able to work more, you have a number of non-communicable diseases that are afflicting you. So it's important that we get the issues of our pensions right. And it's important that, and it's good you're having this, we are all having this conversation. For us as nurses and midwives, of course, the issues of pensions is very important to us. And therefore, when we listen or we find ourselves in the situation where we find ourselves when it comes to SNIT and the way it's being governed, the way it's operating, and all of that, it's a source of concern and a source of worry for everyone. We see the investments that SNIT is doing, and at the end of the day, we know it's not really benefiting workers in general. You gave the history of pensions in Ghana, and of course, the major issue that influenced the pensions was the development of the government white paper on pension reforms. And it talked about a number of things, such as instituting the National Pensions Regulatory Authority, which has been done, ensuring that there's unification of pensions, and ensuring we phase out Cap 30, because, of course, it's not sustainable. Looking at reviewing the SNIT law, looking at reviewing the structure of SNIT, ensuring that those that are working in the informal sector are also covered by some sort of pension, so that when they go on retirement, their financial security is secured and all of that. And the reforms has come. We have the Tier 1, the Tier 2, the Tier 3. And SNIT is basically in charge of Tier 1. Tier 2, from my estimation, some of the private schemes are really, really doing well. And if you look at the latest figure in terms of the total quantum of assets within the private sector pension space, it's hovering around 38 billion, as against SNIT somewhere around 18 billion thereabout. But the Tier 2
It tells
schemes,
you something, doesn't it?
Of course. The Tier 2 schemes have been in operation for barely about 14 years thereabout, and SNIT has been there forever.
1972.
Forever. So that tells you that there's something fundamentally wrong. And we know these things, and that is why this conversation is important for us to voice out the issues. People should be level-headed about these conversations and understand that there's need for change so that we get things right for the benefit of all of us.
And Mashood, just to feed off from where she ended, you do a lot of retirement research and all of that. If the private pension schemes, Tiers 2 and 3, are making as much money as she's saying, or practically twice what SNIT is getting, then it tells you that people repose more trust in them You know, it's what? Social Security and National Insurance Trust. But it appears the trust is with the private rather than with the public. But what is your reading of where we find ourselves when it comes to our pensions money?
All right, thank you, Ben. I think I'm going to join Madam to commend Joy News for putting together a dialogue like this for us to have a comprehensive conversation on the subject of social security policy. You know, just as you mentioned in your intro, social security reform, social security in Ghana has gone through a number of phases. In fact, from independence in 1957, we have had 7 major legislative reforms as far as social security is concerned, including 3 amendments. Now, what has happened over the period is that we have the most recent one, which has to do with the implementation of the Act 760, that is the 3-tier pension system. A few years after the implementation, that is about 13 years after the implementation of the Act 766, I can confidently tell you that the objectives of the Act 760 or the reforms in 2008 has not been fully realized. And what were the objectives? The first objective was to enhance retirement income security to the Ghanaian pensioner when they retire, and also to set up uniform rules and regulation for the administration and payment of benefits in Ghana. Those were the 2 objectives. Now, what we need to do is, we are talking about 3-tier pension system, and 3-tier pension system, we are talking about Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. I see the focus has been on SNIT. If we want to get it right, then I think we just have to, especially if we want to catalog the issues properly and get solutions or assign solutions to the issues that will be coming up. I think it's important we break the discussion down into Tier 1 and Tier 2. Of course, she did indicate that there has been a lot of disparity as far as asset under management and the Tier 1 and Tier 2 are concerned. What, if you observe, I have done a lot of social security research, and what I'm finding is that countries that have adopted the multi-tier pension system, who have been successful, what they sought to do is to get an excellent connectivity between the various tiers, and that is what we have not been able to do. We have had what do they call it? A very serious disconnect between Tier 1 and Tier 2, operationally and systemically. If you look at, and I'm going to take it one by one, in terms of the social security policies, if you take benefits, we are finding that about 98% of beneficiaries of disease workers did not get their benefits under the Tier 2. Of course, when you take from 2011 all the way up to 2021, beneficiaries of disease workers who received their benefit under Tier 2 did not receive the corresponding benefit under Tier 2. And that is one of the reasons that is explaining the wide disparity between asset under management under Tier 1 and Tier 2. I'm going to take it back to 2013. In 2013, we had SNIT controlling 81% of the asset under management against 19% for corporate trustees or private fund managers. All the way down to 2021. As of 2021, the trend had reversed. We now had corporate trustees or private corporate trustees managing or controlling 71% against 29% for SNIT. Then in 2022, corporate trustees' asset under management share had increased to 74 against 26. And I am saying that we have this disparity because benefits under the corporate trustee or private schemes have not been adequately paid. That is what is explaining this one. Right. And again, coverage. I said there should be a way of linking properly. We need to comprehensively link the operations of Tier 1 and Tier 2. We are having a case of benefit losses to beneficiaries of disease workers because the system has not been linked. It should be said that once the member or the beneficiary goes to SNIT to apply for benefits, it should trigger the processing of benefits under the Tier 2 and Tier 3. Coverage. Again, we are finding that about 81% of employers who are employing between 1 to 30 employees are not paying social security contributions under Tier 2. And that is as a result of, issues with enforcement of compliance. If you look at the operational strength of MPRA, of course, we have the function of enforcement resting with MPRA as far as the Tier 2 and Tier 3 operations are concerned. Don't forget, Tier 2 is mandatory. You have MPRA having only 7 zonal offices across the country. And I can tell you how many staff we have in each branch, in each zonal office. Here again, we are talking about over 88,640 establishments that SNIT has across the whole country as of December 2023.
There's definitely a mismatch somewhere.
Exactly. So coverage in there is not matching, and it's all because of what do they call it? Lack of effective compliance enforcement under the Tier 2 arrangement.
Okay. So I'm going to have you hold it there, because we'll come to some of the details, even the National Pensions Regulatory Authority, and whether they are fit for purpose. You have the PURC dealing with utilities and all of that. Their NPRA, are they able to do what they are supposed to when it comes to SNIT, for example? And you know part of why I'm bringing this up. But let me come to Dr. Nyako too, as well. You represent Labour. You also do your research, policy research. Over time, let's focus on what some would call Tier 1, SNIT. Our pensions payments. Have they lived up to the expectation of your members who have pensioned off?
Okay, thank you. And let me commend you as well for the focus on pensions.
Right.
It's so important. They have not lived up to our expectations if you focus on SNIT. And of course, there are many issues about pension beyond SNIT itself, and we may have time to talk about those issues. When I say they have not lived up to expectation, there are a few indicators. You still have a significant number of pensioners going home with less than 500 Ghana cedis a month. That's very low pension, still persists. Now, within the pension arrangement, there's still so much on inequality. So while some significant number of people are going home with 500 Ghana cedis, you also have on the same pension scheme people receiving over 100,000, 150,000. Highly unequal pension.
There was a time where I think the highest, and I was getting, I think, 160 plus thousand.
About 170.
And then there was some reform to cap it.
Yeah. So you still have this unequal pension. But we also have a situation in this country where for the over 14 million workforce, just about 2 million are actually contributing to pension. So there's low coverage in terms of workers covered. Then the other issue about coverage is also the contingencies covered. If you look at ILO Convention 102, it has 9 branches for Social Security. We cover only 3 of those contingencies. And that has to do with old age pension, invalidity pension, and survivor's pension. The other contingencies, such as unemployment insurance, for example, or maternity leave, are covered as employer liability. And if you take maternity leave, it's having a serious implication for young people getting into employment. If I should employ you and then within 2 or 3 years you come with maternity concerns, it means that the private employer will have to take care of that. In some countries, it is not like that. So there are serious issues with pensions in this country. But most of it has to do with the reforms we did. And it also has to do with the fact that SNIT and its management of our pension resources have not been the best. And I don't need to elaborate. All the things we have known about SNIT over the last few years illustrate clearly that pension fund management is a serious problem in this country.
Interesting way to put it, from technology for databases to selling off shares and all of that. It appears something fundamentally wrong is happening when it comes to SNIT. I'll come to Mr. Esso finally in the studio, and then we'll get to one of our pensioners for her to share her story about what it has meant to be on SNIT benefits. But coming to you, Mr. Esso.
Thank you very much, Ben, and then thank you, Joy FM, for this program. And then I'm happy that the focus is a dialogue on pension, the National Dialogue on Pension. So let me kick my discussion by positioning the discussion of our pension system into the Social Security.
Right.
And so ILO says that Social Security is the protection that the society provides to individuals and households to ensure access to health care and to guarantee income security particularly in cases of old age, unemployment, sickness, invalidity, work injury, maternity, or loss of a breadwinner. I'm sure that is what Doc was just trying to assure to. And then we, as a country, we're able to provide 3 of all these 9 that is ILO is providing. Now, let me also say that I have read a lot of articles, research, that sometimes they try to position the argument in pension of SNIT against the private pensions. But let us all understand that at 766, that came as a result of the reform, is trying to put all of us together. That's why I like the discussion about the disconnect. It's trying to put all of us together, the private pension and the state pension together, so that we can ensure income security for workers when they go on retirement. If you remember the recommendations from, or the technical report from the Bedia Commission, I mean, when they tiered the pension into these 3 tiers, the assumption or the calculation was that if we're able to fulfill the contributions that we are making right now, we should be able to be getting over 100% income replacement ratio if you go on retirement. So the question is that if you are now talking about inadequacy, then have we be able to fulfill the objectives of this new reform? What is Tier 1 doing, the basic national social security needs? What are they doing about it? Because if you're able to fulfill the 13%, SNIT is supposed to provide to you about 60% of your income replacement when you go on retirement. And then the private pensions are to do between 45 to 55%. So now we've also seen the figures as at March, how the private pensions asset under management have grown and how SNIT is also doing. Now we all know the teething problems that SNIT also have, that I'm sure that as the discussion goes on, we can all enumerate. But apart from that also, I think that the pension system as a whole needs to be relooked at again, especially in the space of the investable assets that we have available to the pension system itself. We need to relook at it again. Recently, I'm saying this because recently there have been the arguments between market players and then the regulator and the Ministry of Finance whether pension trustees can do external investment, which is of course provided in the investment guidelines. And that has been one argument that the private pension, the chamber, have been holding with, how do you call it, the regulator. And I also want to say that I think in this country, we should be very careful how we position pension. That is why I define what social security is. Sometimes when you're talking to some people in authority, they see pension as a financial tool. I mean, they see pension trustees only buying or investing in bonds or equities, but they don't see it as positioned as a social security tool, but an attempt to grow the contributions of the investors to enhance their income security in retirement. So I think we need to position this discussion very well, since it's a national dialogue, so that we all can be in sync. The state administrators and the private administrators can be in sync to see how we can improve the pension delivery for workers when they go on retirement. All of us sitting here are below 60 years, and I believe that we'll all be going to retirement one day. And then that is where we'll find out whether the job that we are doing or the dialogue that we are having here, whether it's going to impact on us positively, or we also will go back and start shouting that our pensions are not enough. And therefore, I think that we should have a discussion that should lead to a position that we can all assure ourselves that when we go on retirement, we can have our income security and should be able to maintain our standard of living.
Thank you, Mr. Eso. I think basically what he's saying is that all of us have our futures or our future at stake here. And of course, looking at the economic circumstances, even more so now, more than ever, we have to have those safety nets. And one of them is to have a pensions regime that works so that at least we can fall on those when it comes to some of the basics, health and all of that. But let's now hear from someone who has been there, experienced it, and has a story to share. We will get to her in a bit. Balbir Alan, she is a pensioner, and we'll be getting to her shortly. But I've heard talk about coverage. I've heard talk about resources and how they are used, because once we make these payments, we expect that when our times are due, we shall get the benefits. It's like putting your money in a bank and expecting that when you call on the bank, they will give you a certain quantum at least of your money back. If they fail to do that, then you know that there are problems. In this instance, coverage is an issue. It's part of SNIT's problem. I'll come back to you and start with you, Mashood. How bad is that problem? Coverage, the number of people involved versus those who actually should be contributing.
Okay, so Social Security coverage is a very important assessment indicator when we're talking about effectiveness or really looking at the efficiency of the Social Security system. There have been significant disparities in coverage along the lines of tiers, along the lines of gender, and along the lines of sector of work. We are talking about informal, formal sector. We are talking about private, public sector. And let me pick it one by one. Of course, in my first submission, I did indicate that 81% of employers who are employed between 1 to 30 are not paying Social Security contribution. Even though it's mandatory, they are not paying Social Security contribution under the Tier 2, creating huge disparity between Tier 1 and Tier 2 as far as coverage is concerned. Now, when we are talking about gender, you have 38%, even though we have more women in Ghana than men, you have the contributor population made up of just 38% against 62%. 62% men and 38%. And that translates into the pensioner population. When it comes to the pensioner population, you have 32% women and 68% men. That clearly tells you that we have left our women behind. And that is a major...
It also tells you that quite a chunk of the deficit actually is...
It has to do with the women, because most of our women are found in the informal sector, and that is what brings me to the next point. We have disparity along the lines of formal and informal sector, and I'm very excited about the SNIT initiative to venture into the informal sector. I think that what they need to do is that they need to really focus on women, because we have more women in the informal sector. And so it's creating a lot of disparity. Again, if you take a look at Ghana Statistical Service data, what we are finding is that even within the formal sector, we are finding that about 26% of those who work in the formal sector, mostly in private establishments, are not covered by the basic national social security system, let alone Tier 2. So coverage is a very big issue, and I'm saying we have significant disparities along the lines of tiers, Tier 1, Tier 2 disparities, gender, and sector of work. We are talking about private, public, and we are talking about informal and formal. And I need to emphasize the point that when we're talking about coverage, it's a very important assessment indicator when we are assessing public social security systems.
Right. Thank you for laying that background when it comes to coverage. We'll come back to that. But of course, as we continue, I'd also like to bring in Austin Game. He's a labor expert. And we also have, on the other end, also joining virtually, the Secretary General of the Public Services Workers Union of the TUC, Bernard Ejay. Gentlemen, good evening. Thank you for joining the conversation. If you can hear me.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So I've heard both of you now. I'll start with you, Austin Game. This conversation we have already kick-started, but when it comes to contributions, you would realize that sometimes contributors would say, listen, there's been a lot of labor unrest. You would have money that has been contributed that is meant to go to some of the pension fund managers, including SNIT, sitting at the finance ministry, sitting in certain places where they ought not to be. And then there is labor unrest on the back of that. From where you sit, why are some of these things happening? And how? What do we do to streamline them to ensure that pensioners benefit adequately? You can add your initial thoughts since you are now joining the conversation. But I'll start with you, Austin Game.
Right. Thank you. Let me join hands with my colleagues to say thank you for inviting us to engage in this profitable conversation. I think that I was invited by NAT, as teachers, to represent them on the Pension Reform Commission. And as was alluded to by colleagues who spoke earlier, it was an in-depth kind of findings that we went into from 2004 to 2006 before we really completed and put together the report for the attention of government and the passage of the bill into law to date. I must also say that I was one of the two members of the commission sent to SNIT to go and take a look at their operations and some of their activities. And so when I hear people talking about what's happening now, as far back as 2006-07, we saw that SNIT was gravitating towards a place we may not like as contributors. So that's just the basic side of it to start with. Now, in reality, because of the way my colleagues there contributed already, I need not repeat what they have said. What is really the problem is that we are not respecting the rules that govern the processes of pension management. Government upon government are the ones that are guilty of all the employers. They deduct money, they do not send the money to the SNIT or the tier 2 people on time. And clearly, we've all been lackadaisical in talking about it, maybe for whatever reason, I cannot tell. But I think it's about time, particularly with this kind of dialogue, to open up and say what is appropriate so that we can take steps to correct them. Because if we cannot acknowledge what is wrong, we cannot take steps to correct them. Now, to me, the main features we recommended and which became part of the law is about the governing structure. If you have a governing structure, first of all, beginning with the National Pensions Regulatory Authority, and they are prudently managing what we all expect them to manage by way of ensuring that they hold SNIT and the second tier and the third tier, operatives to account for whatever stewardship that they hold in trust for the people. Then we'll be on a proper, journey to achieving what we really want to, the purpose why we established the pension scheme in the first place. That, to bring about equity, that's why we try to phase out from 1st January 1972 the Cap 30 aspect of pension in Ghana, leaving perhaps only the armed forces and the superannuation scheme as it exists today. Now, if we take the governing structure properly and the governing authority ensure that the police and the board of trustees, let me call them board of trustees, if the board of trustees of SNIT are ensuring that the investment decisions they make are prudent and the return on the investments are, ab initio, at least anticipated based on actuarial studies, we will not be sitting here talking about pension the way we are talking about it today. So key is about the regulatory authority, which is vested in the MPRA. It appears they are a bit loose, maybe because of the excess of government interference or the kind of people that are appointed and the changeovers. Already they've changed about 8 CEOs since they came into office. So clearly that is a deficit.
Since you're there, let me just ask you briefly. The MPRA, in terms of how it is managed, and some people will also talk about political interference and all of that, but is the MPRA fit for purpose? If you look at the logistical might of SNIT, and you juxtapose that with the NPRA, it's pretty stark, the differences. Is the NPRA able to regulate SNIT?
Yeah, they should be able. What we put together, the NPRA properly so in place, they would have been benefiting from monies they will pay by both SNIT and second tier. Those contributions, they are supposed to take commission out of it to enable them to manage. So they will have reasonable amount of money, because if we are to eliminate government interference, then government is not the one to be providing money for this purpose, because SNIT is not managed by government. SNIT is managed by itself. Government do not pay the payroll of SNIT. It's not paid by controller. It's paid by SNIT. And therefore, what we anticipate in the report and into the law, if all the regulations are going to be, followed as rigidly as we expect it to be, honestly, we will not be sitting here talking. And the investment, the return on the investments, and let me go back to the regulatory bodies, the governance structure.
I'll let you make your final point on that, because we'll come back. But you make a final point on that, the governing structure.
We didn't know that as of today, we'll be having the president being the one appointing chairman or chairperson and appointing other people. The owners of the trust are the contributors. So it's for them. Government can send maybe one person or so, not even two, because they are not the owners of the money. So that the owners of the money will select those who have the mindset of investment, of actuarial knowledge, of administrative understanding, and those kind of people to go and sit and account for their stewardship. For now, the accountability aspect and responsibility on the part of the governing the structure is not adequately in place. And I think that once that can be taken care of, that should go a long way to solve the problem. I think I'll pause here. Maybe you get back.
I will. Thank you very much, Austin Game. Let me also bring in Bernard Ajay, who is also with the TUC. From where you said, we already have one of your representatives here, but as far as the General Public Services Workers Union of the TUC, that branch is concerned, when you look at our pot of money at SNIT and how things are going, what are your concerns, Bernard?
Thank you very much. Let me start off also by commending you for this national dialogue, because our pension issues are very important, whether we like it or not, and whether we plan for it or not, we will all go on pensions. So it's important we ensure that the pension system we have is stable and works well, so that it can guarantee a source of funds to meet the financial needs of workers when we proceed on retirement, basically so that we can get food, we can feed ourselves, we can house ourselves, we can take care of our health, and also provide ourselves with some little leisure after our hard work in contributing to the development of the country. Now, I mean, we are very much concerned, because the truth is that majority of pensioners from the public sector, especially those with Public Services Workers Union, are receiving very low pensions, which can be attributable to the investment returns that are coming, the management of the funds, as my other colleagues have said, and that the way SNIT is managing our funds are also not in the best interest of the ordinary worker. I've listened carefully about the disconnect the studio guest has made between the three tiers, but I must say that we must not be quick to throw away the baby with the bath water. Right. Those disconnects need to be dealt with, but also we should remember that we've had some implementation challenges. Now, if you look, there's a cap on the second tier and third tier management in terms of expenses or expenditure in managing the funds. Whereas if you look at SNIT expenditure, and in your introduction, you did mention some figures, there seem not to be a cap. And SNIT expenditure, we believe most of the funds, instead of going either into investment or accruing to the benefit of the members, is going into the management of the fund. And one of the reasons for this is what Mr. Austin Game has said. It's a regulator problem as well. How strong is the regulator in ensuring that all players in the industry work for the benefit of the ordinary worker? Because the objective of this new scheme is to ensure retirement income security, which invariably also feed into your topic for this national dialogue of securing our future. So we think that we should look at these issues very critically, continue these national dialogues, and ensure that the low pensions that we are currently experiencing, which is partly also due to low salaries in the public sector where I come from, because single spine has woefully failed, late contribution of our SNIT or pension monies from government, which is delayed, the regulator once again failing to apply sanctions or making sure interest are paid on these delayed payments. All these are factors that are affecting our pensions. And we believe that, as my colleague in the studio have already mentioned, we believe that a lot should be done to make sure that our pensions are properly taken care of for our retirement income security.
Thank you for situating the conversation from there. I was just corrected that you are the General Secretary, not Secretary
Exactly.
General.
Exactly.
But we've situated the conversation from labor. We've even heard from some who are thick into research when it comes to retirement benefits or retirement research as well. But let's hear from a pensioner and what she has experienced over the period. We have joining the conversation as well, Balbir Violet Nadinswa Allen, who is a pensioner. Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
It's a real pleasure having you join the conversation, and she joins the conversation on phone. Let's start off with when you pensioned off. How long has it been? In which year did you pension off?
Oh gosh, I haven't worked for many years. I've been a pensioner for many years.
I see. Can you give us an estimate of how long it's been?
I lived in UK for quite a while, and then I returned to Ghana in 2013. So since I returned to Ghana in 2013, I haven't actually worked.
All right, since 2013. Do you get any benefits from SNIT?
No, I don't.
Okay, so your benefits largely come from the UK?
No, I don't get any benefits from the UK yet, because I'm not 67 yet. But my husband is a white pensioner from UK who lives in Ghana with me now.
I see. The age you mentioned, did you say 57 or 67?
67.
67, right.
Yes.
Tell us about what you know in the UK as far as pension benefits are concerned. At least you have your husband as an example. What pertains to him? Okay,
so my husband gets the lowest amount of pension because he lives in Ghana. And that's £150 plus a week.
£150 plus a week?
Yes.
That amounts to about £600 plus a month?
Yes.
Okay.
Which comes up to about 12,000 cedis a month.
Right. And he is getting this purely because he is now resident in Ghana?
He's getting this is a lower amount because he's resident in Ghana. If he lived in England, he would get a higher amount.
Do you have any idea about how much he could have been getting?
He told me he is losing about 10%.
I see. So 10% would be like an extra 60?
Yes, that's what she said.
Right, about an extra 60. Now, I'm sure you follow the conversation, though you may not have your finger in the pie of SNIT.
Unfortunately, I couldn't hear you till you contacted me. And I couldn't then hear the other panelists, but I can hear you very clearly.
Okay, so I'll situate the conversation for you. I was saying that I'm sure you have followed a bit of what happens when it comes to SNIT in Ghana, generally, not the conversation we've had so far. We've spoken about contributions, the number of contributors, the low numbers. We've spoken about the low benefits that are paid to contributors. And we're also looking at the investments of SNIT in itself, whether these are viable in the best interest of the ordinary Ghanaian. Now, here in Ghana, you have contributors who earn, by and large, a number of them, just about 500 plus cedis. Some of them maybe even less than 500 cedis. If you look at the current economic dynamic, 500 cedis probably wouldn't last you a week. When you consider that from where you sit, what does it mean to you if you were dependent on such a benefit every month?
Okay, so I was with my cousin today, and she's actually on 300 cedis a month.
Your cousin is getting 300 cedis a month?
Yes.
Do you know how long your cousin has been on these benefits?
She's 82 years old.
82?
82.
So she's been on this for practically what? 2 decades?
Yeah, I'd say that.
2 decades.
Because the pension age here is lower than the pension age in the UK.
Indeed, it is. And she's been earning 300 cedis. Like, has this been consistent? Have there been any changes? I am assuming there have been some changes.
Absolutely no changes.
300 cedis since she pensioned off?
Yes. And the 300 cedis used to be okay. But because the CD has depreciated so badly, she's now dependent on people like me and her children to help her financially, to buy her medication, to take her for her eye test. She can hardly walk now. So it's difficult for her to get around.
And I
have another cousin who is also in the same kind of situation.
Do you know how much that person is earning?
I have never had the courage to ask her, but I know every month she contacts me and we give her 500 cedis a month towards her, she says it helps with her medicals.
And you see, you keep mentioning medicals. That is one of the most problematic areas for people in that age bracket. Medical issues here and there, and they would have to be paying for them.
I spoke to one on our platform this morning, and he's been asked to get out of the house he rented because he can't afford to pay his rent.
So this person is being evicted. This person is being evicted.
Yes, and unfortunately, when he bought his when he went into the micro finance or savings and loans thing, when he bought his, I don't know what you want to call them, but when he bought them, the interest was going towards building a little house for himself and his family. But when he lost his money in 2018, when we all first got hit with the closing of all these financial institutions, so he couldn't finish his building. So he has been renting, and now he's got to leave, and he still hasn't had his money back. And he doesn't know where to go, and doesn't know what to do because he's already struggling with medication and food. And he's begging from family and friends.
The 300 cedis you mentioned would not even be what? 20 pounds.
That's right.
It wouldn't even be 20 pounds. Now, this relative of yours who is earning 300 cedis, if you were not helping out every month, I mean, I have no idea what she could possibly do with the 300 cedis. Could you share with us, and could you share, just to paint a picture, what it would mean if you were not lending her some support? What life would be like for her?
Oh, it would be very awful. It would be very, very awful because, come on, look at the cost of electricity. Look at the cost of the utilities, gas, water. Then look at the cost of a ball of kenkey. And you want a person, she works with Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, and you want this person to survive on 300 cedis a month. When somebody like my husband has brought his pension and is sitting in Ghana here, and he's earning like 12,000 cedis a month, because
he's even at the lowest. He's at the base. He's at the base. Lowest.
He's at the base because he did the most basic jobs. He's at the base. And he's on 12,000 cedis a month. And he can save some of his money. Now, I always say, I sold the family, I came to Ghana and I sold the family property. And I invested that in government bonds. My husband, we made him put his first amount of money into this microfinance thing because we knew one of the managers of one of the companies. And then they shut down those all those companies. So when those companies were shut down, that's when we said to him, look, we'll put some money in government bonds. So when I sold the family property, I put the money in government bonds to support family. And I was also able to do some philanthropical work. I was able to support some charities and pay the school fees. I adopted some children. I brought home some of the family old ladies who were neglected, and they're living with me. But I can't actually feed them and clothe them and pay their school fees anymore. You see, and I can't say to my husband, give me your pension to feed these people, because he's worked all his life for his money, and he likes being a foreigner, certain things, which are now very, very expensive.
Right.
And he lives in fear every day that he will be ill or something, and even his pension will not be able to cover his medical bills. Luckily, he's in good health. And this man is always having panic attacks. He's 72. But if he was back in England, it wouldn't be like this, because he wouldn't have to pay council tax. They would pay his rent for him. He will have free medical care. No matter how bad he might complain about the medical care in UK, it will be better than here.
Right. The NHIS. Right. And it makes for stark reading, isn't it? So the minimum, and because your husband is here, he's earning what would be the equivalent of 12,000 plus cedis. And the minimum someone is earning here, according to your claim, is around 300 cedis. Per the information I have, the minimum should be around 430 Ghana cedis. But hold for me, Balbir. Let me also bring in the chief actuary at SNIT. He has a rebuttal. I want him to explain to us what exactly is happening. Mr. Joe Poku, good evening.
And good evening to the rest of the panelists. I'm sorry for joining in late because the notice came on a short notice.
Better late than never. We're grateful for your time.
Better late than never. Right. So if you can allow me a few minutes to make a few comments on that have transpired so far. First of all, let me say that I must congratulate you for this platform, and it's a good beginning. And we can all have these dialogue and see how we can improve on the system that we also might depend on. Because in our retirement, some of us may not have nothing, may not have anything but next. So on my way to joining, I heard the ACR executive director, and I agree with him 100%, that was what I was going to comment on, and he nailed it, talking about the assets under management. We should know that when a scheme begins, a scheme like ours, there's a period that you take to accumulate funds. So you are not paying out yet. So when it begins, you have a lot of funds, and you can have the opportunity to invest those funds. And if you do that prudently, your beneficiaries will be better for it. So you have the opportunity to accumulate funds at the beginning of the scheme, every scheme. And when it gets to a point when you are paying out, Obviously, you cannot compare with a scheme that had just begun, let's say, 10 years ago, 14 years ago, that have accumulated funds, and we can go into even the nitty-gritty, we can go into the detail about whether they are getting all the funds and they are paying what they are supposed to pay or not. So obviously, there's going to be a disparity in terms of asset management. So that is what explains the distribution, or if you like, the evolution of the asset under management with SNET and the others. That is 70-something% as you quoted, and now it is dwindling, and the second tier is taking over. So that comment, Mashood explained it adequately, and I think that's I will leave it there.
But before you segue to the next point, when you look at the disparity between the tier 2 and maybe tier 3, in addition, what they are accumulating by way of the returns or the revenue, that people are more willing to go to them compared to SNET. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, because you cannot just bring your funds to SNET. SNET 1 is regulated by law. So for the second tier and the third tier, you choose where to place your funds. And then, as you know, SNET is governed by law.
But they are also governed by law. They are not lawless. They are not just doing anything. They are also regulated.
I was making a point that even before you place an investment, it has to go through a process. And that process, I think I can explain here, guided by the funding policy, which was approved by the MPRA. And then you go through before you even place an investment, as opposed to somebody who's regulated, who's managing a private fund or private funds, and can easily, quickly take a investment decision, and push money in there. So we can go into all that discussion. What I'm trying to say is that it's easier when you are dealing with a private investor than dealing with a corporate entity like SNET, which is quasi-government, if you like. So that is one of the reasons why people may probably move money there, because they have the opportunity, they have the option to take it there.
Let me push you just a little bit on that, just a little bit more. Is there a way that SNET can take advantage of this window and also capitalize on those contributions, or to ensure that at least some of those also come your way to boost your finances? Is there a way?
So
do you have any plan to do that?
I was coming there. If you can just allow me a few minutes,
okay,
let me address that. So as you all know, SNET has been set up to collect contributions from, every worker in Ghana, can be a foreigner or even a non-Ghanaian, but that's what I mean. As long as you work in the country, you are enjoined by law to contribute. The employer, somebody has employed you, the employer has to pay your contribution. So our mandate is to collect these funds and then pay benefits when they are due, and use the funds to pay benefits, and the surplus or the excess, we place it in investment. And then it will earn some returns and it will add to the reserve. Now, let me start, first of all, by saying by design, the scheme is partially funded. What it means is that benefits are paid from contributions and returns, and there is also this important part, which is the intergenerational transfer of value, meaning that we always need, like, the new people to come in. That is the fuel for the whole scheme. So always, we need new people with new investment, with new contributions to come in to support the pensioners, those on pension. That is the design of the scheme. So we always have to get new people coming in. So in that regard, we have embarked on this program, and somebody mentioned it, the Self-Employment Enrollment Drive initiative. It started last year. As at the time, we had about around 14,000 people who had signed up. And as we speak, about 2 weeks ago, when I checked the data, we had over 100,000 now. So multiple folds. So that's the way we feel that it should go, because that is the fuel for the scheme.
All right, and I'm sorry I keep interjecting, but I'll let you say everything you have. But when you make a point, lest I forget, I just want to interject. About how many people, have you had estimates about how many contributors do we need to add on every year to sustain the scheme? Because you say that we need that constant supply of new contributors. I agree with you. How many people do we need to get on board every year, minimum?
Okay, right. So not necessarily the people that matter. It is the funds you bring in that matter. The funds that matter. Right. Because the people, we are assuming that as you bring in, you bring the quality. Quality means that those who are paying reasonable salaries, and they are contributing on those salaries. That is what matters, not the number of people per se. But we are assuming that you have the number of people, you have the numbers, obviously will translate into the fact. But let me quickly say that the scheme is a defined benefit one, the SNIS scheme. What it means is that what you put in determines what you get. So you have a formula which has been put in the law, and that determines how we calculate everybody's pension or everybody's benefits in the scheme. So the higher you earn, the higher your pension. The lower you earn, the lower your pension. I came in quickly because of a comment that has been made about 300 cities and so on.
And that was going to be my next question. What is the lowest, under the current SNIT regime, what is the lowest someone can earn, a contributor can earn?
Okay, so I can share some statistics with you. As at, was it last year? This year, beginning of the year, we had the contributors, about 25% of them earning as low as 500 a month.
500 cities.
500 cities.
So no one was earning below 500 cities.
No, they were earning up 500 cities and below. That's what I mean.
500 cities and below.
Exactly.
No, so I want the barest minimum. I want the barest minimum that anybody, who is the lowest earner, what is that person earning?
Lowest earner will be based on the minimum wage, the national minimum wage. You cannot pay contributions below the national minimum wage. That is the monthly equivalent of the daily national minimum wage, which now is around almost 400 Ghana cedis also. Forgotten the exact figure. So that is the lowest it can be accepted into the scheme. I mean, as a member, you cannot contribute below the equivalent of the daily national minimum wage. Your salary cannot be below that. Then you pay your contributions on that. So the main point I'm making here is that even for the 300 cities that we are paying as a minimum pension, and I must say that I would like to have, I'm not challenging the information he gave, but based on the information I have and the data I have, there is nobody who is on pension, is about 80 years old, and we are paying the person 300 cities. It won't happen. Why? Because the minimum pension of 300 cities has been in existence for about 4 or 5 years now. We maintain that, and there's a reason. And if there's time, I'll come to that.
So you're telling me for this person who supposedly earns 300, it's an impossibility. Could it be an anomaly in the system? Because this person is obviously relying on family to bolster their finances.
Okay, so if I have the opportunity, I'd like to know who that person, I'd like to get his detail or her detail and confirm and check, because it can't happen, because he's been on pension for so long. The reason is that even for those who are paying minimum pension in the year that we declare the minimum pension is 300, the following year it is indexed and they go up. So they don't stay on the 300. So the 300 becomes the new entrant, those who are coming into pension now, like this year. If you are coming to pension, you go on pension and your salary is so low, let's say it's the minimum wage, and you pay your contributions on it, and your best 3 years that we use in the computation makes it below the minimum wage, or the minimum pension, which is below the 300. Then we pay you the 300. We have quite a number of them like that. So once we pay you the 300 for this year, as we move into next year, there's a feature we call the indexation, which we do that alongside the salary growth rates, wage inflation in the country and other factors. It raises or it increases the base of everybody's pension, including those in the receiving the minimum. In fact, for those receiving the minimum, they are even at a better position, because when we do the indexation, there is a mechanism that we call redistribution. And redistribution basically is like taking from those who are earning so much and giving it to those who are earning so little. So
it's a sort of standardization, right?
So it spreads it. So it means that the lower you get, the higher your percentage of increase in a particular year. Okay. So there is no way that you earn 300 cities 5 years ago, and you are still earning 300 cities today. It's not possible.
Okay, so if she was earning 300 cities then, it is likely she's earning 400 plus cities now.
It will be far more than that. That's the point I'm trying to make, because it has been so long ago. In fact, if you allow me, for those who have been on pension for, let's say, 7 years, for example, their pension has doubled, more than doubled as we speak. So if you were on pension for, let's say, the year 7 years ago or 8 years ago, and you start with a pension of about 300 cedis, like you're saying. By today, you should be earning more than 600 cedis, almost 600. That is what it is.
Okay.
For those who have been on pension for so long, for like 17 years, it is more than 11 times. So if they were receiving 1,000 at 11 years ago, by now they are receiving about 11,000 Ghana cedis or more on the pension because of the indexation. And so the longer you stay on because of indexation, the higher your pension is. So it will be difficult for somebody who is about 82 years old, and so meaning that he's been on pension for 20-something years.
Exactly.
For somebody who's been on pension for 22 years, for example, you are earning close to 40 times what you started with, about 39% of what you started with. So the person started with 1,000, now he's earning 39,000. So how is it possible that you are earning 300? So that's the point.
What if at the time she was pensioning off, she was earning about 20 cedis? It would make sense now that she's getting about 300 plus cedis. But before I go back to Nadenswa on some clarification.
So if you can allow me just one point.
Right.
Just one point.
Right.
On the point about what you put in determines what you get. What you have to do is that the same SNIT scheme that pays somebody 300 cedis a month is paying somebody close to 170,000 cedis a month.
I was just about to get there. So the highest earner currently earns about how much? In the region of what?
About 187,000. 187,000 every single month.
And this is based on their contributions.
Exactly. So the more you earn, as I said, the better your pensions or the better your benefits. That is why we are. But I'm sure time will allow us to go into that. I'll probably expatiate on that point. That we are even trying to see how we can help improve the pensions by trying to consolidate salaries and allowances, and so that discussion also needs to be had, because by so doing, you are increasing the base on which the contributions or the benefits will be computed. And so if you join your allowances together with your salary, then it gives you a bigger figure on which your contributions will be paid, and that will translate to the benefits you are going to get at the end of the day. So it's important that we have that discussion, but that probably will be for another day. So this is where we are, on the same market, on the same scheme, on the same period. Somebody's getting 300, which probably, if we were to be going strictly according to the law, according to the formula in the law, the person wouldn't even get a 300 cedis. But because of the administrative instruction that we can't pay anything below 300. That is why it's even getting the 300. At the same time, somebody is getting 187,000 every single month. And in January, coming January, this person getting 187 is most likely you'll get over 200,000 a month. That is the reality.
These ones, you know what they say. In the jungle, these animals, they operate in sizes. But let me quickly go back to Nadenswa. Hold for me, Mr. Poku. Nadenswa,
I'm right here.
Can you clarify for me what the dynamics are with this relative of yours who supposedly is earning about 300 cedis? Is this what you've been told or what you know?
It's what I know. It's not, she said it. She said it several times. And it's the same figure she mentions every time.
Have you ever
she's
seen?
Now at the age where.
Have you ever seen a slip, any payment, any reference that, or has she gone to the bank where this is what she's got as her pension money? Have you got any proof?
I've never poked my nose in her business, but I've been hanging around with her since 2016 quite a lot. And every month when the money comes, my money has come, and she mentions the amount, and we tootle off with her, and we go and buy her a few drinks, and it's always the same figure. It's never changed.
This is rather curious. Just hold for me as well. Let me come into the studio briefly. Mashoud, does this surprise you, or is it that maybe because our country is full of surprises, sometimes someone could sit on someone's money and you never know? Is this a surprise to you? What could be happening in this situation?
Yeah, so what I know about the pension payroll and indexation, I would say Madam Na may have to check with the relative again, because it is not in line with the provisions of the Act 76, especially if you look at how Senate is calculating pensions and all that. And I'll give you a few statistics. If you pick For instance, in 2016-2017, the minimum pension was 276. Then from 2018, it has been sustained at 300 Ghana cedis. And as we speak, the minimum pension is 300 Ghana cedis. I remember
that's the minimum pension.
That is the minimum pension.
300 Ghana
exactly.
cedis. That is for someone maybe now starting.
Exactly. Now starting.
Who was contributing the basic.
Exactly.
Right.
And I remember you asked her how long the relative has been receiving pension.
Right.
How old she is.
Right.
And I remember she mentioned 85, 82.
Yeah. That'll be about 22 years.
Exactly. Let's even take it that she went on retirement 5 years ago. It is an impossibility, just as the chief actuary mentioned. It's an impossibility for the person to be earning 300 Ghana cedis on the pension payroll. It cannot happen. So what I would say is that maybe she should have to check the accuracy of the information that she has been given by the relative.
But the reality too is that there are people earning the barest minimum, 430 cedis
yes.
a month in this current dispensation.
Yeah, so that has to do with that. We have to look at the pension redistribution policy. I have always had the view that the way Senate is indexing pensions, I think it's about time we look at it. We need to reform it a little bit to reflect fully the principle of solidarity. You have a pension payroll where 7% of those rich pensioners in the upper bound control about 32%. Whereas we have...
what percentage did you mention? So the top tier?
7%.
7% control over 30%.
Over 30% in the upper bound. Whereas we have 68% in the lower bound, controlling just 37%. It is just telling us that there is something wrong with the way we redistribute pensions. You know, this is what happens. All of us are...
But he rightly mentioned also that it's based on what you contribute.
Exactly.
But then it must be standardized,
That is what I'm coming to. We are in the pool as contributors. We are pulling our risk together. When we retire, when we are retiring, or when we are retiring, our benefits at the point of retirement is computed based on our salaries. Now we are in the pensioners' pool. That is the time you would have to ensure you effectively or efficiently redistribute pension. So if the current pension policy, what it does is that it seems to widen the social and economic gap between the rich pensioners and the poor pensioners over time. And I think it's something we have to look at. I'm excited to say that we are currently undertaking a research that is looking at effectively redistributing pensions, and the objective is just to bridge the social and economic gap between the rich and the poor. We are particularly looking at the way we redistribute pensions.
All right. Gentlemen, just hold for me. Lady Perpetual, just hold for me. I know that I've not come to you enough. I will do that. But let me wrap with our guest, Nadensua. Nadensua, before you take leave of us, in a nutshell, you've heard from Mr. Poku, the chief actuary at SNE. It may be that the figures you've got so far from your relative are not the most accurate. But these people, the two of them you mentioned, are still living in penury. What would you like to see done from the standpoint of SNIT?
You know, even if you say they are on 450 cedis a month, they can't live on that, can they? Mm. I even know people, old people, who don't even receive their pension. It just doesn't arrive. Mm. You need to bring these people into the studio and let them talk to you themselves and tell you, my pension doesn't come. I don't get it.
Yours doesn't come.
My pension is 450.
Your pension is how much?
You tell the person what they should do with their 450 cedis a month. Mm.
Can you clarify for me? You said your pension was how much? 450.
Pardon?
Did you say your pension was 450?
I said even if it is 450 that somebody earns, what is 450 cedis today?
Barbara, we're grateful that you joined the conversation. Thank you so much for what you've added to it. Balbia Violet Nadensua Allen is a pensioner, and she joined the conversation. And she's also shared some stories of people she knows. It may be a problem with the accuracy of it, but confirmation is that pensioners, some of them, are earning about 430 Ghana cedis a month. The question is, what can you do with that amount of money. Perpetual, coming back to you in the studio. We've come this far talking about contributions and how much we are getting in return. But let's also, unless you have some reflections on some of what has been discussed, let us also look at SSNIT in itself and its workings, board, investments, and all of that. From where you sit, are you satisfied with what is happening?
Thank you. Before I get into that, I just want to touch a bit on what Mashoub said earlier concerning the lack of regulation when it comes to the Tier 2. Indeed, the Act 766, as amended, forms the basis for the NPRA's work in terms of being the regulator within the pension space. But I think the concern may be whether the NPRA is living up to expectation in terms of cracking the whip where it needs to and all of that. I am in the Tier 2 space because I serve on the Health Sector Occupational Pension Scheme Board. And I must say it's the scheme that sets the pace within the public sector. And I'm proud of the scheme and how we have fared from 2012 to date. But there may be some problems with the NPRA, especially when it comes to, let's say, their lack of ability to address issues when it comes to non-payment of our contributions, for example. The last time it was paid was in July 2023. And up till now, nothing has been paid into our schemes. It's money lost.
That's a full year.
That's a full year because it's money lost. If these monies had been invested at the time they were supposed to come in, it would have benefited the contributors.
They would have accrued some profit.
They would have accrued interest. The Tier 2 pensions are basically defined contributions. What you pay in is what you get. The SSNIT plus your returns. For SSNIT, it is more of a defined benefit. At the end of the day, it's calculated for you based on what your contributions have been, and then you take what is given to you. So that is the issue. And I think that the bit about the 81%, as Mashoub said, about the 81% of employers with employees between 1 to 30 are not paying their Tier 2 contributions may also be a little problematic. We know there are employers who are not paying the Tier 2 contributions of their employees, and this is a big problem. When you come to the health sector, for example, we have a small amount of what we call IGF staff. They work within certain health facilities, and their contributions don't come regularly as we expect. And in some cases, we've not even been able to identify the facilities and the number of employees there whose contributions need to be paid. When you go into the bigger pool of the private sector, yes, there are employees or employers there who are not paying the contributions of their employees. And the law will catch up with them sooner or later, because the provisions are in the law. And if you are caught up, you will be held accountable. You must pay the contributions of your employees. Now to the question you asked me. You see, SSNIT, and we all need to be open-minded about this. If SSNIT was operating very well and we were all happy, maybe we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation in the first place. Ms. Opoku shouldn't paint the picture as if everything is well or rosy with SSNIT. That is not the case, because consistently we have seen that there are governance problems with SSNIT. There are operational problems with SSNIT. In terms of the governance, I think at the beginning of the program, you show the representation at the board. Yes, government has the higher number of representation as opposed to those representing labor. Consistently, we've made a seem as if SSNIT and whatever assets it has belongs to government, in quotes. But the monies are workers' money. It's workers' money. And it should be viewed as such, so that if any government needs, at any point in time, if you need to pay the contributions of the workers of your nation, you need to pay it readily. And You don't deduct those monies and then use those monies for something else. It is a big problem, and I think it is successive governments have been doing this, and we have to put a stop to it. Now, in terms of the governance,
so do you find it abhorrent, some of the investments that SNIT uses our money for?
Of course.
You think it makes no sense sometimes what they invest in?
You see, investments are when it comes to the pensions, you are guided by the level of risk with the investments to guide you into what it is that you need to invest in. And of course, the dynamics of your contributors in terms of the age limits and all of those things should guide you into which investments to put in what. But I think the problem with SNIT is that we need to get to a level where, one, in terms of their operations, we need to cap it. I think Bernard mentioned it. We have to cap whatever it is they can actually have access to for their operations. It shouldn't be because when it comes to the tier 2, fees and payments and everything should add up to 2.5. That is, we pay MPRA from that, we pay service providers from that, administrative services and everything goes in there. When it comes to SNIT, there's no capping as such, and they have room to do whatever it is they want with our money, which is not the right thing. And we need to get to a point where when they need to go into any investments above a certain margin, they should publicize it for all of us to see. And it should be captured with details in their annual reports and all of that for public knowledge. And there shouldn't be...
So more transparency. More transparency exactly. Is what you're saying.
Transparency. And whatever it is that they have to invest in should be an investment that will benefit the end beneficiaries, which are the contributors.
But that's exactly what SNIT claimed they was trying to do in even this recent Rock City deal.
You see?
To the benefit of the ordinary contributor.
We have all come to learn that even SEN, that advises the board, came out with several points on the reason why the sale to Rock City should not be so, or it should be enhanced in a certain way. Guidance was given.
The NPRA supported it.
The NPRA supported it, and that is why organized labor came out the way we did, because, like we said, it looks as if it's a regulator, but it's crippled by certain forces, which shouldn't be so. If you're a regulator, you must have the space and the boldness to do what you need to do. The CEO and the board must do the needful in terms of ensuring that whatever decisions that they are taking benefits contributors of the various schemes. Tier 1, as we see it, with SNIT, needs to change. Tier 2 has its own problems. Even as you sit here, I've talked about the arrears that have not been paid. Until this DDEP, we also thought the investments into GOG and everything was risk-free. We've come to learn that it is not so. All the schemes are trying to find a way of diversifying their portfolios. And there are a lot of benefits we are seeing with offshore investments. But the space is not being opened up because Ghana does not want us to go offshore with whatever monies we have. But at the same time, there are not enough elements within the space to actually go into these investments. And I think that it's about time the MPRA looks at it critically. There are so many nations around the world that no caps are placed on schemes in terms of their offshore investments. Some have to do it up to 100%, some have it at 50%, 40%. Within at 766, it's pegged around 5%. And even that 5%, we are not being allowed to go into it. And it's about time we look at it and revise our notes, because at the end of the day, it's supposed to benefit. It's a defined contribution. And so the investments that are made is what will actually increase the returns of the individual who is supposed to receive what at the end of the day. Okay. And you want me to end here?
No, go ahead. Make that your final point, if you can.
Okay, so it's important that we strategically as organized labor, also look at going into the future, representation on any kind of board when it comes to these investments, prepare our people well, follow up on them, engage them, get them expert advice so that they can do their work well and not leave them the way we have done in the past that have come to this level. And of course, going back to the government's white paper on the review of the Senate law and the review of the governance structure of Senate or the whole structure of Senate, it's important that that aspect is also looked at. And one important thing is also about the unification of pensions. It is not the best. You know, when the pension reforms came into being, it was only the army that was exempted. As we speak, all the security forces have gone into captivity. So where is the unification of pensions here?
Right.
Meanwhile, we know they are not contributing a penny to their pensions. But at the end of the day, the benefits they have in terms of lump sum is way more than those of us who are contributing to our pensions.
And it becomes even worse when the single spine salary structure has also not lived up to expectations.
Exactly.
So you lose from both ends.
Exactly. So we must ensure that if it's going to be the pension reforms that have come into place since 2010, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, every worker should be put in here. And we shouldn't be having capacity and the rest, because then we all know capacity is way better, way more than what the tier 2, for example, provides.
On their salary.
And they retire on
it's
their
almost
salary.
like Article 71 versus
yes, maybe that
the
is
rest
one
of
fight
us.
that we will all call for that,
right?
So that we all enjoy same.
All right.
So there is need to unify pensions and ensure that there's equity in the system.
All right. Mr. Eso, I'll come to you shortly, but before I do, let me just remind you, apart from Joy News, independent, fearless, credible, we're also live on Joy 99.7 FM and on myjoyonline.com. And I'm going to announce this number so that if you'd like to shoot us a message, you can do so. Send us your messages. I already have some of them here that I'll be reading at the appropriate time. The number is 055 1111 997. 055 1111 for the last time. 055 1111 997. Mr. Eso, you've been following. I see there's a lot you want to say. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. And then, you know, at the beginning, my initial comment, I was trying to position our discussion as a national dialogue and not SNITs or we versus SNITs. I was trying to do that. Now, listening to Mr. Opoku, I think if he had taken a position that put all of us into a discussion, that we want to arrive at a conclusion that benefit all of us, I think I would have sided with that assertion. Now, for instance, we know SNIT is really suffering due to the delayed payment that have not come from government yet. I mean, that is also affecting their sustainability issue. And we know that is a big problem. I mean, if the government pays the tier 1, they will pay the tier 2. So as we are all saying now, government owes SNIT about 12 months of remittances in arrears, same as the tier 2. And that is an issue that...
It's the same problem Perpetual was pointing to.
Yes.
You hold the money that should go into the kitty and be invested.
And I think that Mr. Bogu should have been candid enough to say that these are some of the problems that we are facing as SNIT, which is also leading us to where we are going. Then all of us as players in the pension industry, we can find a way of seeing how to resolve that problem. He spoke about the defined benefits. I mean, and then we are also doing the defined contribution. For us, what defined contribution means is that what it contributes, the private trustees must manage it in such a way that you can earn returns on that. So that when you are going to retirement, you have all that bulk money, the contributions that you've made, and the returns that you have gotten onto it as your benefit when you go in retirement. Now, defined benefit, as he said, is a formula that has been stated. But let me also say that it is true that pension contribution is linked to your basic salary. In Ghana, it is linked to your basic salary. Some people may be earning as low as 490 Ghana cedis as the minimum pension contribution. Why? This is because, whereas when they are working, they were taking a lot of allowances, and then they had a little bit of basic salary, which was being declared by the employers. And that is what their pensions are being computed on.
And that's another problem
It's
that
a
you would
big problem.
see across the board.
Across
Even
the
with
board.
high earners,
Yes,
you would see that maybe they are getting a lower portion. The gargantuan sum is not covered. It comes in benefits.
In fact,
so you may think that you are earning so much, but if you are not saving on what you are earning, what you are getting in your pocket, and with what inflation and everything is like, your benefits at the end of your period would be very small, assuming it stays that way.
Yeah, and I'm sure Mashoud have done a research that have shown that even some employers can do as much as 70% in allowances and 30% only declared as basic.
Mashoud, does the law allow that? 70%?
Yeah,
the law allows
it. The employer
that is
indicates it as such, it's fine.
And so that's why I'm coming to the point that it should take SNIT and the private pension, all of us, to start fighting for what we call that SNIT or pensions should be tied to your gross emolument. Then in that case, your basic and your allowances and any benefit that you are earning, the employer is computing your basic, your pension on that. And that is a point that I think that SNIT and the private trustees, we can position ourselves and try to push an amendment for the law to get to that stage. And that's also...
So I am going to push you now.
Of course.
Is that something, lady, gentlemen, is that something, a move that we would support? I see you shaking your head. Is that a move you would support as the TUC? I'll come back to you, but I just want to know.
The National Labour Conference held in Kwawun Kwetia mentioned this.
Good.
It mentioned government, okay. So it mentioned something to
Good.
the fact that we need to pay pension contributions
on gross emolument
salary, including all allowances.
All allowances.
Okay. But hold on. This was in 2014.
Good.
As far back as 2014, when ILO did the second evaluation of the SNIT scheme, it recommended this. Why does SNIT wait until 2022 to bring this thing about? Why has SNIT kept all those valuation reports even secret?
So SNIT has slept on the job?
Of course. You see, saying that we should pay contributions on consolidated salary means that SNIT wants more money.
Right.
But who will be prepared to give SNIT more money, given the way they have managed the little they have?
That's another side of the question.
That's an interesting question.
Interesting question. But
that's an interesting question. I want you to wrap on. Do you have many more points? Because
about 2 points.
Mr. Poku also wants to come in with some rebuttal. I'll come to you.
So I think that we should come together and diagnose the problems that we have in our pension jurisdiction as state pension administrator, which is SNIT, and the private pension administrators as the private trustees. Let's come together. Let's diagnose what the problems are. Because in effect, look at the 2 or 3 points that I mentioned. It affects SNIT, it affects us also. And we think that we should come together and diagnose the problem. Because when we rightly diagnose the problem, we are going to prefer the right solution. And I believe that all of us here are going to benefit from the solution. Let me touch on the governance aspect also. And I think that is a canker that is actually eating a lot of state institutions in this country. Because you have the president appointing basically all the board members, appointing the CEO, including the board chairman.
So the politicization of everything.
Of it. And I mean, let's be candid with ourselves. If you have the president appointing you, and then the president calls you about an issue, how much more? Some of us heard the rumors of how the former Director General of SNIT have to go.
Which one, Dr. Tenkrang or which one?
Yes, Dr. Tenkrang. But it's not something that we can. But some of us heard some bit of rumors about how he has to go. So we need to be very bold, even to review the law and limit the number of people that the president can actually appoint, especially for me in the pension space, on the MPRA board and then on the SNIT board. Look at it from this angle. The private trustees, we appoint our own board of trustees. We go through processes. We go through a very stringent recruitment process to ensure that the people that are going to be brought on board on the board of trustees, they are well qualified, they have the experiences, and when they come on the board, we expect them, and largely to the extent also that they eschew any form of, let me say, familiarization or maybe somebody appointed you, so you have to come and do somebody's bidding over there, and they come there and they work. And that is the result that we are seeing from the private trustees side also. And I think that it's a recommendation that in the next reform, one that we need to touch very much on the pension space is that we should limit the appointment of the board of trustees and the board of directors for SNIT and for NPRE, so that they can be very independent and they can do their work as an independent institution. Thank you very much. Thank
you. Dr. Nyakuotu, you would have to hold your horses because I want to allow Mr. Poku to respond to these, then I come to you, else there'll be too many things for him to respond to. Mr. Poku, over to you. You speak for SNIT, at least on this forum, you speak for SNIT. Quite a number of things have been mentioned, including even the constitution of the leadership of SNIT. What is your response?
So leadership, he means the board. I'm sure that's what he meant.
Well, he's also mentioned the CEO. You heard him talk about Dr. Tenkran, now replaced by Osafo Mafu.
Okay, so yes, I don't want to talk about that much because it's in the law. The law that we are currently operating under enjoins the president to appoint a director general.
Well, that is why he's saying some of those things must change. And I agree with him. Some of those things must change. Go ahead.
I mean, we can have that discussion. And if that is the case, that's how it's supposed to be. All well and good. But I'm saying that currently that's what it is. So we are having the discussion about everything. If it becomes necessary, that has to change, and somebody else or a group or a public service commission or any system that will come out and present or appoint a director general. Oh, well and good, that discussion can be had. My quick remarks on the issue about, I was trying to paint SNIT. No, I didn't do that. I was only stating what is the fact, what the records say, what the data say, that we have people earning as much as 187,000 and so on and so forth, graduating all the way to 300,000. That's the whole point, because it depends on what you put in. That determines what you get. What you put in determines what you get. So if you're earning low, you are going to get low pension. And as we speak, I mentioned earlier that some people are getting their salary, as we speak, in this modern Ghana, it's less than 500 cedis, as we speak. So if such a person should go on retirement, obviously, he's not even going to get, based on the formula enshrined in the law, he's not even going to get 300 cedis as pension. So in that case, how long the person has worked doesn't even come in here. Because if all of us work for, say, 40 years or 35 years, the law says we are entitled to 60% of our best of salaries, average, 3 best years, salary as beginning pension. So assuming we all did the 35 years, anyway, earning 10,000 cedis a month, and I was earning 1,000 cedis a month. We all get a 60%. 60% of what? Of the salary. So you are going to start with 6,000, and I will start with 600. That is how it goes. So unless we change that formula or what, it is not going to change the benefit. That also answers the first point about the fact that the investment is not doing well. That's why we are paying low pension. I think that should answer that. That has nothing to do with the investment. It's the formula in the law. And then the issue about arrears, government owing arrears for 12 months. I beg to differ, that is not supported by the facts. As a last man, the government
please repeat that point. What is not supported by the facts?
That the government is owing 12 months in arrears of contribution. So I must say that clearly, because that is not what we have as we speak.
Perpetual, I think you made, hold for me. Perpetual, I think.
They are paid up to March.
Tier 2.
So the only outstanding was
Mr. Poku, hold for me. Hold for me.
Okay.
Perpetual, what did you say?
For Tier 2 contributions, government owes from July. The last payment was in July 2023.
From August.
So from
I'm
August
talking about Tier 1.
to date.
For me, I'm talking about
I didn't mention Tier 1.
So, okay.
Right. That is where the difference comes in, because she was referring to Tier 2. And you are referring to SNIT. So two different things.
It was Tier 1 that he was talking about.
Right.
Because he was like, we should address, that is what my good friend, I've forgotten his name, mentioned. That's what I should be talking about, government owing and not paying that. That Tier 2 is not what is managed by SNIT. SNIT manages Tier 1, the basic national social security system.
No, she was just mentioning that as an aside. So go ahead.
I apologize. I thought it was Tier 1. So that's the first point. And then, for the issue about, the issue on salaries and allowances consolidated, I think I mentioned it. And I even said that if we come to that point, you have that debate. Again, let me mention that SNIT doesn't hide any actuarial evaluation report. It's unfortunate that we have this thing going on. This is a public document. Anytime the external actuaries produce this report, as is enjoined by law, once every 3 years, we are supposed to have an external actuary come in. Not necessarily ILO. It can be any external actuary of repute that can conduct actuarial evaluation, because the internal one is done in-house by the SNIT actuaries every year. But the external one, the law says once every 3 years. Once it is done, it becomes a public document, and we distribute to all relevant parties. The MPRA, the board of SNIT, every member has a copy. And you have representatives on the board. So once they get a copy, it's like they can share with their membership. So it's not a secret document SNIT is hiding from anybody. In fact, I'm sure Mashoud will tell you, he personally requested for this way back 2 years or so, 3 years ago, for all the past reports, and I provided it.
So it may not be a secret document, but what have you done? What have you done with that document? That is the question. It may not have been secret, but since 2014, it's been sitting there. What have you done with it?
No, it's not been sitting there. So the law says when we get the report, we let the NPR people have it and all the people have it. And then we consider the recommendations. Mind you, I've spoke about that in the press conference, that the recommendations that they give is like, some people were saying that 12 years you are going to collapse. That's far from the truth. It gives you an idea as to where the direction you are going and how you should veer off so that you don't go and hit the iceberg, let's say, on the high seas. It tells you from the contributions you are getting, the payments you are making, and what is coming in based on these assumptions. All the way, the assumptions can go all the way to how many people are even born. Fertility rates, it influences these predictions. Inflation, it influences that. So if they put all that together and they come out with their projections based on a methodology which is standardized or which is accepted by International Association of Actuarial Society, for example, International Actuarial Association, and all the bodies that oversee these things, then they come out with their projections, and then they recommend a few things to do to make sure that the scheme becomes sustainable. That is how the context in which the report is put. So it's not like they are there to predict figures that by so and so and so this is going to happen by so and so. That's how actuaries do their work. It's based on these assumptions and the projections, and they come out with these predictions or with the reports, and they go ahead and do and give recommendations as to how it will help you, how you can navigate around it and become sustainable. And I've also said for the last point I want to make, that the scheme has been designed such that you need new people to bring in new money. So as long as you have those people coming in and you have new funds coming in, the scheme will be sustainable because you are going to have enough funds to pay and have access to invest and places in better investment to bring in returns to come and add up. That's basically how it runs. So once we get that and we are managing based on all the investment aspects, which we think that we can also open it up for discussion.
Okay.
That maybe the policy, how it is guiding us and where we are placing investment. There's a suggestion that maybe when we are going to do certain investment, we should make it public and get discussion on it. If that is possible, why not? Because it's for the betterment of all of us, including those, all of us sitting here. We are all supposed to be
with this Rock City bit that in recent times has come to the fore, if not for certain actions, it would have been done on the blind side of everybody, wouldn't it?
Oh, see, if you say blind side, that'll be a bit too harsh, because Senate, as I said, now as we speak, there is a law guiding how we operate. We have a board and we have the policy, investment policy approved by our regulator. And so when we take an investment decision in-house, it goes through that process before they even approve and gets through NPRA. Before the investment decision is taken. For this particular hotel thing, I thought I didn't want to go into it because it has been flag over flag, if you like. So it has now, the transaction has been cancelled or terminated. But it went through all the processes as I've mentioned, as it's laid out. And then the transaction advisor, so that brings me to the point about Sem Capital said ABC. That is the reason why the hotel was not sold as at the point it came out. Because we were following strictly the advice of the transaction advisor. That's, we should do ABCD. The Rock City people presented a proposal for payment And we found it unacceptable and rejected it. They brought another one, rejected it twice, based on the same advice. So I think we should put that in context. So it isn't like, if it were not so, then probably it would have been so before anybody hears about it. In that case,
Mr. Poku, hold for me.
Can I come in?
Who is it? Is that Austin Gami?
Yeah.
All right, briefly, Austin Gami, please go ahead.
Well, I want to go back to the earlier point I made, that the issue about SNID and pension in general is about, we have to tackle it from a two-pronged approach. And I would defer largely to my friends in organized labor to enable us to succeed in this direction. Now, very important is about the governance structure and the contributions. My two friends there, the Perpetual and my brother Ajay, Bernard Ajay, they are aware of my position on this issue about the consolidation, and that employers are deliberately paying people a lot of allowances to the detriment of the people knowing that one day they will retire. We did a lot of things to try and change the circumstance. People are not ready to fight for it. So I would defer largely to organized labor concerning all that we have discussed so far, because they are the only potent body that can bite and bite well.
All right.
No other institution, because our governance, our general political atmosphere is not conducive to do anything meaningful in this country except organized labor take a stand.
Okay.
So I think it's very important to take notice that the governance structure is key. The president will have no business being the one, whether law or no law. We must go to a national tripartite committee meeting and have this important discussion concerning the socio-economic importance of it for us. So we let them know that we can no longer continue with this kind of arrangement.
Okay.
Where the president will be employing a number of people and they go and make a decision and then come out with their policy designs and so forth and publish it in papers. We don't think that to be holding well for anybody. So two things: governance structure, very, very key. And then two, ensure that consolidation of wages are critical for discussion. It shouldn't be something to be imposed though. We should have a national dialogue about this thing and reach an agreement that will satisfy everybody. I'm grateful.
Bernard J. Austin Gami mentioned your name. I hear you also want to make a contribution. You can quickly make it, and then I'll come into the studio. Because from here, after I take you and Dr. Nyako to, I want to look at solutions, the way forward. But Bernard, your take.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've been following, and I believe for the purposes of this national dialogue, we should be scandalized as a nation that we pay retirees as low as 300 or 400 Ghana cedis, whatever it may be, whether it is even one worker, two workers, or three workers that are receiving this. I mean, how many people, as Mr. Mashoud has indicated the statistics, it's only a few people that are receiving the huge pensions we are talking about. This category of people we are talking about, retirees, have certain basic needs. And in this economy that we are, 300, 400, 500 Ghana cedis, I mean, cannot sustain the lives of these people. Some of these people have health conditions like kidney problems, cancers, heart problems. After contributing to the development of this country, as a nation, we should make it a point for the purpose of this discussion that to secure every retiree, this is the minimum amount that a retiree should take as basic pension. And therefore, when we are able to even cap the expenditure of SNIT, whatever excess amount can be used to shore up, I mean, this must change. If it doesn't change, and we always insist that, it depends on the amount of money you are earning, it's a formula, it is the law. Who made the law? We made the law. If the law is not helping us to secure the future of our retirees, What prevents us from changing the law to ensure that there is redistribution of pension, as Mr. Mashoud indicated earlier, so that our retirees can live comfortable lives? In any case, government has changed the law and is taxing every income and every allowance, anything workers earn in monetary terms. Government is taxing all of them. Why should it be difficult for us to change the law to make sure that we either have this consolidated pay and make sure pensions are paid or pension contributions are paid on every income that a worker earns? So we should be scandalized.
Right.
We should agree that it is unacceptable for a retiree having worked 20 years, 30 years, some 40 years, and are taking home as low as 400, 500 Ghana cedis in this economy. How do they take care of their feeding? How do they take care of housing? How do they take care of their health? I think it's unacceptable. We must agree to that, whether it's NIT, whether it's labor, whether it's we must agree to that. And as for tier 2 and 3, I think they are doing well. What we need is improvement and strengthening of the systems, so that the challenges that come with the fund growing after the accumulation phase, when it gets there, these schemes will be able to stand strong and survive. So I think tier 2 and 3 are doing very well. We should strengthen the system, we should improve it, and then make sure that we are delivering or securing the future of our retirees. Thank
Austin
you.
Game, Bernadette J, very germane, contributions you have made. Before I come to you, I'm going to have to take a breather. We're still live on this National Pensions Dialogue. We're live on Joy 99.7 FM, myjoyonline.com. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's still our National Pensions Dialogue. Our guests are still here with us as we move forward, zoom into solutions. We're going to pack it and get those questions or those solutions about the way forward. But first, let me acknowledge some of the messages you've been sending through. Let's do our best with them. Nathaniel Lamptey says, please interrogate the salaries of SNIT workers all the way to the CEO. SNIT lives so large on the contributions of workers, which is not good. People can get better pensions if these are checked. Solomon Nate Tete says, please, I would like to find out whether it is possible for SNIT to stop payments along the line. I don't know about that once you start. And if some things are happening, then you have to go to SNIT and pose some questions. George Seja says, who is speaking for the pensioners whose pensions remain static or stagnant and remain as small as 500 cedis in this difficult economic environment? Why is this so? Well, we had a pensioner interact with us, and when in fact those here have also alluded to some of the basics, about 430 cedis, the minimum. Wizzy Ekpe says, the SNIT law must be reformed, you mean the act, and government must exit control of the scheme. Well, I guess here we'll give the technicalities on that. On WhatsApp, some of you have shared. So those I just read are from Joy 99.7 pages on Facebook. On WhatsApp, this one says, the whole story is about single spine salary structure, which is affecting many employees, especially teachers, and something must be done to this single spine salary structure, that is a review to ensure compensation to employees is balanced. This next one says, good evening, Ben. I need you to help me ask what to do to be able to get my Tier 2 pension transferred from my old fund managers to my current fund managers. I need to mention that I changed the jobs hence the change of fund managers. That's something we can address. And I believe one of my guests, Mr. Esso, may address that for you. You say unification of all pension schemes is the solution. That's another one. Unfortunately, I don't have all the names, but this one says unification of all pension schemes is the solution. This one is from Hamza from Wahoo, says, my father was an Arabic instructor. He took home 1,200 cedis as retirement benefit. Kindly let the SNIT rep explain how these benefits are calculated. The formula they gave me gives a different figure. This one says, if an individual has contributed for about 26 years and she is now 49 years old, can she go on voluntary retirement and still receive all benefits as one who retires at 60 years? I think that's what you meant. If we're in Takrady. This one says, I am Frederick. I think there should be education and transparency on the payment and investment decisions of SNIT to the contributors. Then some more coming through. Why should one contribute on his or her basics, which is small, and enjoy the allowances, and in the end, come and say you want to be paid more? That guy is speaking out of, okay, I can't read that, but you say we must be very careful how we allow people to speak about this pension scheme thing. All right. I'm also very surprised that Austin Game, wasn't he a part of those who reformed the scheme, and why didn't he recommend a change in the formula? I believe all of those are in the recommendations that were made. We need to listen to the actuaries to do the debate and not people with no knowledge about these technical issues. I don't know which of them you are referring to, but everybody on this panel is well knowledgeable in this area. I can bet my last pesewa that if we allow Labour to dictate the pace, we'll plunge the scheme into a hole. Someone attacking Labour there. Labour collects about 3/4 of what SNIT takes per month from members. What do they use the money for? They should give us a break. Abdul Rashid says, a nurse... so Abdul Rashid, a nurse. SNIT must only be given 5% of each employee's monthly contributions in order to manage our funds. The 95% should be in the accounts of the employee. This will stay in his account until the retirement age requirement is met. It goes on and on. I'm going to start truncating the messages. This one says, good evening, Ben. Thanks for having this all-important national dialogue. Well, that is what we do at JoyNews and the Multimedia Group generally. I think the fundamental issue has to do with the salary structure for most public sector workers in Ghana. The current salary regime for the majority of Ghanaian workers is not fair and must be overhauled for a better and fairer system. The obnoxious Article 71 cabal must be abolished. I'll just take a few more. I'm trying very hard to get there. This one says, just take a look at this. What the CEO of most state institutions earn in a month is more than the annual salary of an average nurse or teacher in Ghana. How fair is this system? 3 more and I'm done. My take is on those who manage the contributions. Politicians should not be the ones appointing directors and managers. The workers who contribute these funds must have a say in the management of SNIT. Let's amend the law to make this happen. How is it that SNIT has made some bad investment decisions, but the managers are still at post? Then Peter says, congrats Joy FM for organizing such a wonderful program. The biggest problem retired health professionals face is the paucity of their pensions, which result from deductions of allowances from their monthly salaries in the computation of their pension benefits. SNIT or government should move away as a matter of urgency from that practice, as it has impoverished pensioners. The final one I'll do. I was earning 7,200 Ghana cedis a month. However, after 35 years of service, I don't know whether you were earning 7,200 throughout. That would be interesting. But of course, they would pick your top 3. So I was earning 7,200 Ghana cedis a month. However, after 35 years of service, I went on a retirement and was paid a bulk sum of 40,000 Ghana cedis only, and a benefit of 1,900 Ghana cedis. I don't know whether Mashoud can explain that as we go on. I just wanted you to pay attention. 7,200, 35 years, paid a bulk sum of 40,000 Ghana cedis only, and monthly benefits of 1,900 Ghana cedis. So, gentlemen, this is what we're going to do. In the next 14, 15 minutes or so, we're going to have a race against time. I'll start with you, Dr. Nyako Otu. You were going to make your initial comments, make them brief, and then we'll get to the solutions and the way forward. And mind you, I just want to make this point before I come to you. There are best practices that we've all accepted across the world. Netherlands, Iceland, Denmark, Israel. These are the top-tier pension schemes across the world, the best. What can we learn from them? When you come to Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Namibia, South Africa, in fact, South Africa has almost 10 times more assets in retirement savings than Nigeria, which is second on the log in terms of asset base. What can we learn from these? But I'll start with you, Dr. Nyakotu.
Thank you. There are many things about pension, and I don't have much time. The SNET analyst,
Mr. Joe Poku,
stated that the evaluation reports are not secret. I want to prove to him that it's a secret so far, until recently. In 2022, at the National Labour Conference, the communique that was issued, it reads, paragraph 26, MPR ratio ensure regular actuarial assessment of SNET. It means that the government workers and employers that met in Kwawunkwetia in 2022 didn't know that there has been regular assessment, actual assessment of SNET. And there has been one in 2011, 2014, 2017, and 2020. At the time we met in Kwawunkwetia, we didn't know this. That's why we put it there. Second, you see, we are still dealing with teething initial transitional problems with the pension reforms. So the Pension Act actually indicated that within 5 years of having this pension, we should unify all pensions. Where are we today? Pensions are not unified. In fact, when Ostengame was talking, he mentioned the fact that Cap 30 was close to new entrants as far back as 1972. So we shouldn't have had Cap 30 today. Yeah. But today we have actually enhanced Cap 30. It is not just even the ordinary Cap 30. We now have a caste system in pension today where those who don't contribute to pension at all earn the best pension in this country compared to those that contribute to pension. There are things to do with law, and I agree with my comrade, Bernard J., that we actually need to change the law if we want to protect consumers, retirees. Now, the thing about SNET is that SNET pension scheme is a defined benefit scheme. Two things are important in every defined pension scheme: contribution rate, but also the reserves that you build for the future. You have shown us that the contribution rates are coming down compared to benefits that are being paid, so there's a problem there. The ILO evaluation report also says that the reserves are getting depleted, so the future looks very bleak for SNET, and it's important that we address that.
Okay.
The man from SNET indicated that they are actually implementing all the recommendations. That is not true, because the 2014 recommendations are actually repeated wholesale in the 2020 evaluation report. So, for example, in 2014, ILO asked SNET to adopt a funding policy. How difficult it is to do a funding policy. Since 2014, they have never done that. It is important. Now, going forward, and I want to talk about solutions. If you look at the SNET law, it says that all investment decisions of SNET are to be done by the board. Mind you, SNET is investing about 3% of our gross domestic product, about $10-point-something billion. If you are investing that much amount of money, you would have expected that those constituting the board have clear understanding and experience of financing and investment policies. You have the head of the board being a journalist. Now, if you go to Denmark and if you go to South Africa, there's a criteria for being a member of their pension funds. We don't have it. Even in our own law, the MPRA, there's a criteria for being appointed a member of MPRA board, but there's no criteria for being a member of the SNET board. This must change going forward. It is important that those we appoint to the governance structure of SNET and all other pension funds have at least some knowledge and experience in investment and in finance. And that brings me to the question, even if you make sure that all our SNET board members are actually from labor,
okay,
do you really have the experience and the expertise to do? So it is important that we do not just talk about packing the SNET board with people from labor and all that. We should pack it with people with experience in investments. Because if you take the Bank of Ghana out, the other institution in this country that has a lot of resources is
right.
it.
Okay.
And those resources are supposed to be managed for today, but also for the future.
So you've added your solutions. Those are your solutions, right?
But yes, I agree.
You've added your solutions.
Yeah, but also it is important.
So final bit on your solutions,
bit.
and I'll move to Mashu.
The Senate man appeared to downplay.
Please refer to him as Mr. Poku. He has a name, Mr. Joe Poku. I've mentioned
Sorry about that.
Mr. Joe Poku.
So Poku appeared to downplay the fact that the delayed contributions from employers, including government, is a problem. Again, he should go back to the valuation report from the ILO.
Okay.
Every single of those valuation report talks about the fact that there are delayed investments.
Okay, point made there. Mashoud.
Thank you.
Right,
And I think we're going to have to apportion it about 2 minutes apiece just to ensure that.
Okay, so...
or maybe just about a minute and a half.
So I have stated before that if we want to get pension administration in Ghana right, I think we first of all would have to get MPRA right. So what I would say is that we need to look, stakeholders will need to look at improving the regulation and administration of the Tier 2 schemes. That is very, very important. You know, we are looking at a 3-tier pension system. And if we go and we are just looking at Tier 1, we are really focusing on what is happening at Tier 2, or we focus on Tier 2 and not looking at what is happening at Tier 1, at the end of the day, we are not going to meet the overall objectives. It is important we look at it as a whole. What has happened is that MPRA was set up to really, what do they call it, design uniform rules and regulations for the administration and payment of benefits. The question is, have they actually lived up to expectation? My answer is no. And I gave an indication that, one, we have had significant benefit losses to survivors of disease, what do they call it, disease workers. And it's all because we haven't been able to properly link the various tiers. The first step would be to get to link Tier 1, Tier 2, especially in terms of coverage, in terms of benefit administration. Then, if you go to one corporate trustee to the other, we have had, I think, about 47, 47 corporate trustees. If you go from one corporate trustee to the other, what you find is that each and every corporate trustee has a different way of processing benefits. The procedures and requirements for, processing benefit is different from one corporate trustee to the other.
Right.
And this is breeding what we call corruption in Social Security Administration.
Okay, so your final point is?
They would have to find a way of linking all the tiers under the 3-tier pension system.
Okay.
And again, financial sustainability.
This will have to be your final point.
Okay. Financial sustainability. I think Senate would have to move, or government and Senate and MPRA would have to move in 2 directions. One, what they have to do is to examine the demographic and economic risk profile of the scheme. And they would have to take into consideration what has happened over the period. We know what has happened in 2014, 2017, and 2020. What is coming will be worse than what we're learning right now, especially.
Wow.
Exactly. If you look at what has happened within 2021 to 2023, the dynamics don't sit very well. In 2004, we had 16 contributors or 16 workers contributing to support one pensioner. As we speak, the number has come down to 8. In the last 6 years, what we have learned is that there have been fluctuations in terms of what do they call the balance that exists between contribution and benefits. Out of the last 6 years, we have had 3 cases where benefits is more than contributions. We are not used to something like that from beginning to the end. So if you look at it, Senate would have to move in 2 directions. They would have to put together the risk profile of the scheme, run to Parliament for consideration. The second bit has to do with running to stakeholders, try to engage them, let them understand the risks that the scheme is facing and how to share the risk. I think
be transparent. Let's find the way forward. Rachel.
Okay, so it's very important that in all of these discussions, and from what we've heard, we look at the restructuring of Senate in terms of its governance, management, administrative processes, and all of that.
Must the law, the act itself be touched?
The law, yes.
Must the act be touched?
Yes. Of course.
Okay.
Of course, and I think organized labor can lead in this direction. We cannot wait for any entity to start this, and that is why, personally, I'm happy Our technical committee has started working. I'm sure this is going to be one of the recommendations they are going to make, and we are going to take it up seriously and work towards it. I think that the second thing I want to mention is that there are a lot of Ghanaians, especially within the informal sector, who are not covered by any sort of pension. And it's important that as a country, we put systems in place within the public space and the private space to cover all of them so that retirement doesn't become a misery, but a happy moment for people who have served the nation for several years. The bit about the unification of pensions is also crucial. Kwabena touched on it, and I want to reiterate it, that based on what I said earlier, it's important that we look at it and ensure that there's equity within the system and there's fairness. Everybody enjoys what a good pension should be, so that
some dignity. Mr. Eso.
Yes. Thank you very much, and I think that they spent all their time. But let me respond to your listener who asked about porting.
Right.
Yeah. So because of time, you should come to the.
That's tier 2.
Yes, the porting of the tier 2. So you should come to the Chamber of Pension Trustees. We are at the Vanguard Building.
Chamber of Pension Trustees.
Vanguard Building in the Independence Avenue. So we are going to help the listener or the contributor to get around this. So what I would say is that, I mean, let me just corroborate all that my colleagues have said. After 14 years of operating the at 766, there's a need for another run of, I will not call it a total reform, but a look at the Act again to see where we need to improve, where we've come short, what we need to improve on it, and therefore we can carry it forward. I think we have all mentioned that the need of relooking at the Act will lie at the regulations, will lie at how to even position SNIT again, and also position the private pensions again. Because at the end of the day, what we are doing for our pension is for all of us. And then my advice to SNIT is that, well, we've all said it here, they need to look at their investment again and take prudent investment to accumulate reasonable reserves to ensure that they can be able to pay their pensioners.
Mr. Eso, thank you very much. I'll give the last word to Mr. Joe Poku of SNIT. You'll cap it off for us, Mr. Poku. And my sincere apologies to Austin Game and Bernard Ejay. We've simply run out of time. I take the blame. Pardon me for that. Mr. Poku.
Well, let me quickly mention that I agree 100% with the issue about unification of pension, but it's on our drawing board, and so that we don't have people leaving the scheme and joining Cap 30, for example, because that is obviously not sustainable. In fact, it's like we are going around a full circle. That is what happened, and then SNIT has to come in to make sure that we take care of pensioners when they retire, because government was not in a position to pay Cap 30 people way back in 1972. Right. So we don't need to go back to that point. And as I said in my opening remarks, that the scheme by design, we need more people, and that makes it more, it makes it better if you have more people joining the scheme rather than few. So we don't need a situation where people leave the scheme and then the scheme runs. So that's one point. Then quickly, about Mr. Otu, who seems to forget my name always, I refer to me. But that's fine. That's fine. So Dr. Otu, I still insist that the actual evaluation report is never a secret document. In fact, the fact that somebody quoted that MPRA should make sure that these reports are produced doesn't mean that it's a secret document.
Okay.
Then on the board of SNIT, we have reps from various employers and then labor. They sit on the board. And as soon as this report is requested, it is shared among the board. In fact, the board requested for the report. I mean, they request for it once every 3 years. So how come the board will not be aware that there's a report, while the board have members from organized labor on it? So please, let's get that one straight. I think I have to say the report. It has never been a secret document, and Mashu can attest to that. And then when it comes to the arrears, I thought we said it was for second year. But then Dr. Otu came again and talked about SNIT arrears, that welcome the MPR report stating that. That has to do with legacy debt. I was talking about the current arrears, about the current contribution. So let's get that distinction. That legacy that has been there, and then the negotiation going on, that even resulted in the government paying that 2.5 billion in April. So please, let's get that. I'm all for the report. And we have already indicated make some suggestions in the pension reform, and then it will go through the cycle through the board.
All right. Mr. Poku, unfortunately, we've run out of time, but thank you very much for joining the conversation as well. Sophie Ikenye says, excellent discussion. We're grateful that you took the time to watch. Let me just acknowledge the guests who joined us for this discussion. Executive Director of the Africa Center for Retirement Research, Abdallah Mashoud. Director of Research and Policy of the TUC, Dr. Kwabena Nyako, Thomas Kwesi, is Executive Secretary, Chamber of Pensions Trustees. We also had, well, we didn't have the President of NAGRAT, Angel Kabunu, join us, but maybe some other time. The President of the Ghana Nurses, the Registered Nurses and Midwifery Association, Perpetual Ofori Ampofo, was with us. We had Mr. Joe Poku, you just heard him, Chief Actuary at SNIT, Balbia Violet Nadenswa Allen, a pensioner, and then the General Secretary, Public Service Workers Union of the TUC, Bernard J, joining the conversation. We also had Austin Game, a labor expert, also joining the conversation. We're grateful to you. If not for you, this couldn't have happened. And we have a communique that we've put together on the back of this discussion, this National Pensions Dialogue, which we shall share with you on social media and on our subsequent shows. My name is Benjamin Akako. Thank you for watching. Up next, we have PM Express Business Edition. Do stay for that.